We're reading David Goggins as part of our Miracle Makers membership, and Goggins is one of those individuals who tempts you to judge him. But if you do, you will miss his message and the incredible teachings he has to offer. So your mind will really be grappling with it, thinking, is this right? Is this wrong? Good, bad? Do I agree with it? Do I disagree with it? Is he a madman or a genius, a superhuman or a freak of nature? And he is maybe all of those things. But again, if you judge him, if you let your mind go to those places, you miss the message of transformation. And I think he is an extraordinary example of anti-fragile. And that's what we're going to look at today. What is anti-fragile and how do you get more of it? Antifragile is a concept developed by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. He's a statistician, a risk analyst, and a former trader. He developed this concept while studying systems that not only withstand stress, but actually become stronger and better from it. His concept has been applied to risk analysis, physics, molecular biology, transportation planning, engineering, aerospace, and computer science. I point all of that out because this is not a concept that was developed in or for personal development. It's bigger than that. And this is beyond resilience. This came from Taleb's work in risk management and observation of financial markets, biological systems, and tech innovations. He found that some things break, they're fragile, others endure, they're robust, some bounce back, they have resilience, but some things actually evolve in response to stress, and he called this anti-fragile. He says anti-fragility is beyond resilience or robustness. The resilient resists shocks and stays the same. The anti-fragile gets better. We see this same phenomenon in our own body. When you add load, bone is built and muscle grows. When your immune system is exposed and responds, it learns and evolves. Even with the mind and the nervous system, the gold standard for helping someone expand and strengthen their mind is exposure therapy. And with the nervous system, there's this idea of the window of tolerance. And as you get close to the edge and you're able to maintain a sense of safety and security, that you will actually expand your window of tolerance. So across systems, within our own minds and bodies, we see this golden thread of truth with this idea of anti-fragility. So how do we apply it? How do we use it? How do we actually develop ourselves to become anti-fragile? One element of becoming anti-fragile is hormetic stress. Hormetic stress comes from a Greek word meaning to excite or to set in motion. This is like a sweet spot of stress where the body is challenged without being overwhelmed, where you're able to adapt and become stronger rather than break down or shut down. And the key is the right dose. When it's the right dose, the body will activate cellular pathways for repair, regeneration, and growth. An example is sauna or cold plunge. For the nervous system, it's when you're able to maintain the ventral vagal pathway, that open, spacious, receptive, safe space, even when challenged. And then again, the window of tolerance will open as you're able to be in challenge and maintain that sense of safety and security inside of yourself. This idea of hormetic stress ties into a part of the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex. There's an excellent Huberman Lab interview with David Goggins where they really go into this. Now, what Andrew Huberman points out is the anterior cingulate cortex is larger in certain populations with certain lifestyles, and it seems to increase in size when you do things you don't want to do. So it appears to be the seat of will and even the will to live. The anterior cingulate cortex is in a unique position in the brain. It's literally in between the prefrontal cortex, which is associated with rational thought, and the limbic system, often called your emotional brain. The anterior cingulate cortex is responsible for emotional regulation, error detection, mental endurance, and decision making under stress. So it's almost like a bridge. that allows you to have more space, more connection between the emotional center of the brain and your emotional response, especially the response that might take you offline, and the rational part of the brain that keeps you online, keeps you focused, keeps you spacious, keeps you looking for solutions and responsive rather than knee-jerk reactions. And who wouldn't want more of that? So what we're seeing is that when you add weight or load or challenge or stress or friction or difficulty, there is an opportunity to build strength and become better, to become anti-fragile. Now, the stress needs to be in the right dose, and your mindset will impact how you receive it, how you respond to it, how you handle it. There's a great Ram Dass saying that goes along with this. He says, you can do it like it's a great weight on you, or you can do it like it's part of the dance. An excellent tool for making the most of any stress or challenge that comes your way is to measure in the gain, not the gap. This is a concept that comes from Dan Sullivan, and Benjamin Hardy has written about it. And it's a way of measuring progress. The gap is when you're measuring forward to an ideal on the horizon. And it tends to create dissatisfaction and even despair because you're always looking at how far you have to go, where you're not yet, what you're lacking, versus in the gain. The gain is measuring backwards. It's looking where you started and how far you've come. It allows you to see mile markers and progress and growth. It creates momentum, confidence, and gratitude. Most of the time when we give up or we get frustrated by a challenge or friction, when we break and become fragile in the face of it, it's because we're in the gap. We're looking at it and we're seeing where we're not yet, what we're lacking, what we're missing. As soon as we start looking in the gain, we have more willpower and momentum to keep going. So you want to train your brain to look for the gain. What you focus on expands. And then you can challenge yourself and continue developing this muscle of willpower, the anterior cingulate cortex in the brain. Then you have a stronger bridge between your emotional response and those knee-jerk reactions and reactivities that often lead to shutting down, and you're able to stay online with this higher processing center that'll keep you moving forward, solution-oriented, and in the gain. And then who knows what can happen next. As I've been playing with this and challenging myself, especially as I've started running again, a question that keeps coming up, and it's more like a statement, is you don't even know what you're capable of. And that seems so exciting and inviting. But it's requiring me to look at things much differently, to embrace those challenges like a dance, like an adventure, rather than a heavy weight or something I'm struggling through. Here are some practices to become anti-fragile. You can use meditation for anti-fragility because it develops your prefrontal cortex. It'll literally build gray matter in that part of your brain, and it opens your ventral vagal pathway. Your ventral vagal pathway is when you feel safe, cool, calm, and collected. You're looking for solutions. You can see the big picture. You're more responsive, not reactive. And meditation puts you in that state and again lays down gray matter in the brain, developing the prefrontal cortex very much like a muscle. Journaling and reflection is a really powerful way to develop anti-fragility, especially when you're using it to mark and measure your gains. Often we are not reflecting enough on where we've been because we're looking at where we want to go. Journaling and reflection allows you to track. It allows you to see things that might be operating in the background that you're not conscious of, recurring thoughts, recurring actions, recurring dramas, recurring situations. So it's a powerful practice for developing anti-fragility, especially when you're using it to measure gains. And then other anti-fragile practices include hormetic practices, embracing things that stimulate that sweet spot of stress, again, in appropriate doses, and treat it like a game. For example, in another Huberman Lab episode, he was talking about cold exposure. And rather than just going for a certain amount of time or a certain temperature, Andrew Huberman suggested getting over 3 walls. And these walls were like those moments where you want to get out. And I love this because it not only asks you to get in, to do the stressor, but it asks you to be deeply attuned to your body and then also celebrating those little victories where you keep doing the things you don't want to do and building the anterior cingulate cortex. So what does this mean for practice? The yoga tradition and the movement practices that we do have a lot of anti-fragility built into them already. In fact, in the yoga tradition, practice is described as tapas, a rub, a friction, a challenge that generates a spark of transformation, that generates your capacity to change. And when we're doing something like a movement practice and breathing and staying open and spacious, you are rewiring your nervous system to stay in that expanded state even when under stress or challenge. And this is also how you toggle the dose in hormetic practices. You don't want to get to a place where you're freaking out or you're shutting down. You want to stay in a place where you're open and spacious even during the stress, especially under the stress. And this is how you evolve and build yourself up rather than break yourself down during those stressful practices. Again, any type of hormetic practice needs to be in the right dose. Dancing with those I don't want to do it moments are a powerful way to develop the anterior cingulate cortex, that part of your brain that acts like a bridge between the prefrontal cortex, your logical, rational brain, and your limbic system, your emotional brain. And then measure everything you're doing in the gain. What are you learning? How are you growing? How far have you come? What can you celebrate? Versus there's so far to go. I'm not there yet. I'm lacking this. I'm lacking that. You can see how disempowering that mindset is. And it's almost like the default setting for most of us versus measuring in the gain and really seeing your progress and growth. So how do we know that this is really alive inside of us? We call this application and activation. And what we want to see in activation is that you bounce back faster, but also better. That you find yourself automatically and instantaneously looking for the gain rather than wallowing in the gap. And all of this leads to a sense of increased confidence